Hello, everyone. Welcome to this expert webinar brought to you by getAbstract. I'm Kirsten Muller-Doberman, and I'm going to be your host for today's session. We're so glad that you're taking this opportunity to join us today, and we are so thrilled to have Professor Vlatka Hlupic here to join us to have a really, really important conversation that we know so many of you out there are talking about within your organizations and really care about the answers to, and that is what leadership is going to look like in a post-pandemic world. Professor Hlupic is the perfect person to talk about this. She's literally written the books. So we're going to dive into our conversation with her in just a minute. But as I wait for a few more people to sign on, just a few housekeeping notes about this webinar as we get started. First of all, getAbstract is wanting to partner with all of you during this crisis to help you get the most current, accurate information in context for you and your business and your colleagues and family. So we have made the getAbstract library free until May 18th. So please take advantage of that. But also we've created a new daily newsletter to put all of this stuff in context for you. So it's called the Journal Get Context. So you can go on to getAbstract.com and sign up for that. Again, free daily newsletter full of really, really compelling, interesting, and very relevant content. So please sign up for that. Also, we are going to be taking questions throughout the webinar. So if you have one, please just type that into the question box and I'll be able to see it and try to get those questions to Professor Hlupic. And also, we saw a few questions beforehand saying that some of you were seeing content in Spanish. So just wanted to let you know, hopefully you're hearing me in English. The entire content of this webinar will be in English, never fear. And just the last bit is that this recording of this webinar will be available to you. If you registered for the webinar, then a link will be sent automatically to your email with a recording so you can watch it again and share it with your friends, family, or colleagues. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome our guest. Joining me on the other side of the screen there is Professor Vlatka Hlupic. As I mentioned, she is an author of The Management Shift and Humane Capital, both of which we will be talking about today. She is also Professor of Leadership and Organizational Transformation at Hult Ashridge Executive Education. She's the CEO of Management Shift Consulting, and in the last 5 years was voted one of the most influential HR thinkers in the world by HR Magazine. She's also a TED Talk speaker, has written many wonderful articles on LinkedIn. I definitely encourage you to check her out there as well. Welcome, Professor Hlupic, to the show.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate at this webinar, and many thanks to everyone who has joined us today.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, where are you joining us from? And give us a little update from your quarter of the world. How are you doing and how are you coping with all of this?
Well, I'm in a lockdown in London, and the life is a bit different, quite different actually. At this moment, I used to travel a lot and do a lot of speaking and executive education. At the moment, I'm doing all my work at home, thanks to technology. But at the same time, I've been astonished that I've been busier than ever because more and more people are realizing that what I have been preaching for many, many years, over 15 years, it's going to have to become a new normal, a new way of working in the new world that is emerging after this pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't wait to dive into the book with you and talk about that plan that you set out in the management shift. But first of all, it's always interesting now that everyone's on Zoom calls and Microsoft Teams and seeing everybody's background, right? I'm looking at your background and I see this letter on the wall behind you, or what would be your right shoulder, and it has a beautiful logo at the top there. Can you tell us who that letter is from and maybe the story behind it?
Oh, there's a beautiful story behind that. This letter has been signed by His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. When I finished my latest book, Humane Capital, I have been collecting some endorsements for the book cover, and I had somehow address for His Holiness office, and I thought it's not going to cost me anything just to send an email, and I said, I wrote this book. Would you please have a look at it? And if you like it, maybe just write a few words for endorsement. And they agreed. And a couple of weeks later, I received an email saying, This is one of the best books that we have ever seen. We will not give you endorsement.
Wow.
We will write a foreword. So this is the original foreword that I obtained, signed by His Holiness, and that is very, very special for me.
Wow. Yeah, that is absolutely incredible. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I love that. It's such a great lesson. And, you don't know until you try. And what do you have to lose? That's incredible. So
Right.
let's start with your book, The Management Shift. First of all, I'd love to know what motivated your initial research, because the diagnostic tool that you lay out in that book, which is so relevant now, it came from years of research into how organizations can actually implement change. What motivated that initial research? And tell us a little bit about the process that you outline in the book.
Well, I started my career as a computer scientist, and then about 15 years ago, I went through one of my big shifts and I became behavioral scientist, because I always had this passion to help people, to help leaders and organizations, and also to produce tools and methods and models and theories that can be applied by leaders in organizations to really make an impact for the real world of business. One of my favorite quotes is from Soichiro Honda. He said, "Action without philosophy is a lethal weapon. Philosophy without action is worthless." And this is what has been guiding me for years. And I thought, the best way for me to make an impact with my knowledge to the real world of business is to not be just an academic, but I also became a coach and consultant, and I've been doing all this in parallel for decades. So I always wanted to make a difference. I feel this work is my life purpose, and I'm on a mission to make this world a better place. That is what drives me. So I created the management shift approach, and the backbone and the main theory is the 5-level model, which I will explain to you in a moment, to really help leaders and organizations to get through this big shift. And I'll mention what the big shift is as well in a moment. So I looked into lots and lots of theories, from leadership development, adult ego development, consciousness development, learning theories, and so on. And I figured out that there are 5 levels that our individual mindset goes through, and there is a corresponding organizational culture at each of those levels. And perhaps we could move to the next slide, please. So these are the 5 levels, and every level is characterized by specific thinking patterns, emotions, energy, leadership behavior, organizational outcomes. We can't skip the levels, so we can go up only one level at a time, but we can have pockets of different levels within the same organization. So we are talking about a critical mass of people. So where leaders and employees are, when we get the critical mass, then the whole culture will be at that particular level. And those faces in the middle, you can see these are psychological anchors that I have created, so we can associate different levels to different emotions and different colors as well. And that is from what I learned from neuroscience. So I will just take you very briefly through the levels now, because I will refer to those levels as well as we have this discussion. So at level 1, the mindset is lifeless and culture is apathetic, and not much gets done. People are depressed, there is lots of fear and sadness and blame, and luckily we don't see a lot of level 1, but sometimes we do when companies are collapsing and there is lots of uncertainty and so on. So then we go to level 2. At level 2, the mindset is reluctant and culture is stagnating. At that level, we do a minimum we can get away with just to get the paycheck. So we bring our body to work, but our mind and heart stay at home. So we take long lunch breaks, we sneak out for a workout, we dream about being somewhere else. So that is level 2. And if you want to think about the example for a level 2 leader, think about David Brent from TV series Office, and there's some videos on YouTube as well. A completely uninspiring leader. The energy is very, very flat in those organizations. So that is level 2. Then we go to level 3. At level 3, the mindset is controlled and culture is orderly. So at level 3, we are micromanaged. We do what we are told to do. We tick the boxes, we achieve KPIs, but we don't have high levels of engagement. We know that only about 13 to 18% of people are fully engaged at work globally. We have low passion for work, we have low purpose, and we know that in the last 50 years, corporate life expectancy and performance have declined by 75%, largely because majority of organizations operate at levels 1, 2, 3, mainly around level 3 with some elements of level 2. So we need to go through what I call the big shift or the management shift. So we need to shift leaders, employees to level 4. At level 4, the mindset is enthusiastic, culture is collaborative. And the keywords here are trust, transparency, purpose, having fun working, taking care of the environment, giving back to the society, collaboration, community. So at that level, we get step change increase in performance, productivity, innovation, and profit. And very occasionally, we can reach level 5 with limitless mindset and unbounded culture. At that level, we work on some amazing innovations for humanity. We reach for the stars. We are driven by our love for humanity, and we want to solve big problems such as pollution, such as problems with health, hunger, and so on in the world. And here we have innovative teams working day and night on some big innovations, such as Google X Lab inventing driverless cars, for example, or the work that Elon Musk is doing in exploring space and so on. So that is level 5. So the objective is to be by default at level 4, occasionally reach level 5. We can't be there all the time. We would just burn out. So we have to be level 4, occasionally go to level 5. And if we temporarily slip down to lower levels, we bounce back quickly and easily to level 4. Now, this is very, very important because in order to survive and thrive in the post-pandemic world, we need level 4, 5 leadership and level 4, 5 organizational cultures.
Yeah. So the big question is how. I think we can all say that we look in this and say, yes, I as an individual want to be limitless, right? And I know that my organization needs to be more collaborative and in some cases unbounded. But the big question is how. Tell us about the tool you've developed for getting organizations and individuals there.
Sure. I've been using this 5-level model for a number of years, and I have been coaching senior executives to shift from level 3 to level 4. And then about 10 years ago, I had another epiphany. I love big ideas, and I love even more to make them happen in reality. So I thought, shifting one leader at a time or shifting one leadership team at a time was not good enough. It was not fast enough for me. I had to figure out how to help entire organization to shift to level 4 and how to help many organizations to shift to level 4 at the same time. So I went back to my research, and I did a lot of more research, and I looked into data from thousands of references, dozens of case studies, hundreds of interviews. I supervised a lot of PhD students as well in my time, so looked at all this data, and through thematic analysis, I created a framework with around 120 factors that drive innovation, value creation, performance, innovation, engagement, and profit in companies. And I grouped that framework in 6 areas. And perhaps we can move to the next slide, please. This is how I created the 6-box leadership model. And then I created a software with online diagnostics that can measure hidden strengths and weaknesses for any organization or any part of the organization in those 6 areas. So we can see what kind of culture organization has, relationships, how well people work together, individuals, what kind of mindset, drive, motivation they have, strategy, how it gets developed and executed, systems, how the work gets done, and resources. So I like to use a medical analogy. Some people gave me, well, one of my nicknames is a doctor for corporations. So we do this scan and we collect quantitative and qualitative data. And this is like an MRI for company. So we can see what is under the surface. We can see which part of this organizational body, and all these 6 parts are equally important, needs healing. So we do the scan, we see where the strengths and weaknesses, and then in the next phase, I designed a process called action planning using design thinking, where we prescribe the medicine. So we would co-create with employees a very, very specific 1-year action plan for leveraging strengths and addressing weaknesses. And when this plan gets implemented, the organization heals. Everything shifts to a higher level, and this is the big how of this big shift. This is how organizations can move from level 3 to level 4. And when this happens, well, we see magic happening. It's not just revenue increasing and profit increasing, but also companies becoming more humanized, taking more care about health and well-being of their employees. They're able to attract talent more easily. We know from various studies that talent shortage is going to be a problem for many organizations very, very soon. So everything changes, and we see quantitative and qualitative shifts at the same time.
Thank you so much for explaining all that. And we're actually getting a lot of questions about, okay, so how do you exactly move from that level 3 to the level 4 or 5? But also, what happens now when maybe amidst the crisis of COVID-19, organizations maybe were at a 4 and they have dropped down to a 2 or a 3, and a lot of individuals are really struggling? How would a leader step into that? How does any leader step into this current crisis and pull their individuals in the organization back up to a 4?
Well, any leader who has been at level 4 already before the crisis, it's very important that they maintain this, because we know that the leaders can actually affect and spread those ripples and affect the moods and emotions of people around them, even if it's only virtual, even if we are not in the same room. Employees will pick up this energy and the mindset of leaders. So leaders, they have to be at level 4. If they haven't been at level 4 before this crisis started, then there are processes and there are ways that we can all work individually on that to go through this big shift. And I can say a bit more about this later. But right now, leaders need to stay at level 4 and really show by example that they are authentic, that they're really caring, they're human, they really take care of the well-being of their employees, but also maintaining this higher purpose of their organization. Organizations should be forces for good in the society, especially right now. So what is that higher purpose? How they're contributing to humanity, to making this world a better place, what role they play in this world. And they need to be aware that the most successful organizations now and in the future are those that are driven by high purpose. They're socially, environmentally responsible. We know from research customers want to buy more from socially and environmentally responsible organizations. They need to, they will do well if they do good at the same time. So these two things are not mutually exclusive. So finding this purpose and focusing on values, taking care of employees, but also customers and the environment and so on. So having this big picture, this big drive, being authentic, telling the truth in a clear way, and also not losing hope that yes, things have slowed down at the moment, but being very creative. So what could be your role in this new world that is emerging? And we know we will not go back to the way things were, because they were not right in many ways. We were polluting our planet, and we now have a chance to reset everything and to see, okay, how can we become a truly level 4 or 5 company making a difference in the world. And that may involve some creativity in terms of repositioning the whole business models and using technology in a different way, but also not losing the sight that even before they started, and now even more, yes, we do need technology, and it's our lifeline at the moment for working and education and so on. But at the same time, there's this growing need for us to unleash our humanity. At corporate level, that means creating workplaces which are more purposeful, happier, healthier, that are making a difference for the world. At the global level, we have this need to save the planet and to create a world which is more just, more diverse, cleaner, healthier, happier place with clean air, clean water, clean food. So it's important to have this big picture and then see, okay, we as an organization, how can we contribute to this new world that is emerging?
I love that. Thank you. You answered so many great questions that have been coming through about how leaders do that throughout this shift that's happening as a result of the pandemic. And it does lead me to ask you, a lot of this change requires trust from employees, of their leadership, of leaders, of their employees who are working from home remotely. There is a lot of trust being tested at the moment. And I'm going to ask you, because I think that's something we all need to be really open about. And so I'm going to actually put a poll up on the screen for all of you to just kind of gauge. I'm going to launch the poll right now, gauge kind of how you're viewing leadership within your organization, and do you trust them? So I'll just wait for you guys to answer that poll so we can kind of see what the audience is thinking here. But Vlatka, I'd love for you to talk about, how do leaders cultivate trust during this time? Because they might come on for a team meeting or a webinar, or and they might be trying to communicate all this enthusiasm, but if there isn't that trust there, then how are they going to get employees on board?
Well, that is a great question, and it is very important in the context of what we are discussing here. According to some studies, only about 20% of employees trust that their leaders will tell the truth when confronted with a difficult issue. So overall, globally, the levels of trust are pretty low. But I would say in those organizations that have level 4 leaders, that have level 4 cultures, the trust is much higher. So that is something to bear in mind. So if you step back and look into the trust, there are two key types of trust. The one is really practical. Do you trust somebody will show up on time? They will do their work. They will tick all these boxes. They can be relied on that they will do their work well. And then there is emotional trust. And emotional trust is, it's all about trusting and understanding that you will get kindness, respect, empathy from your leader. And that has to be earned through time. So what leaders can do, well, there's the various things that they can do. One is, well, being open, being transparent, and communicate clearly, truthfully. So telling the truth, even if it's not easy thing to share amongst employees. So truth, openness, transparency, showing compassion, having this clarity in communication, and making sure that people's voices are being heard. It's very important. So communication has to go two ways, not just top down, but bottom up, top down as well. So these are some of the tips I could give very briefly. But the key point here, that all these things that I have described, they are inherent, they are embedded in organizational DNA, in organizations that operate around level 4. So once you put effort in this big shift from level 3 to level 4, the trust is more implied, and the figures for trust would be much higher than in those traditional organizations as levels 2, 3. But I would say before this pandemic started, I think about probably 80–85% of organizations operated at those lower levels, and only about 10–15% of organizations operate at high levels. And I'm pretty confident that after we reemerge in this new world, there will be more and more organizations operating at high levels, because that will be the only way to survive and thrive in this new world.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to just share the results really quickly. About 70% of our audience voted, and it's interesting. Most people, the majority, would say that they either somewhat or strongly agree that they trust the leadership in their organization, and that is great to hear. What's interesting, though, is that larger part of that majority would say somewhat agree rather than strongly. And 8% of you are neutral, 7% somewhat, and 2% strongly disagree. I'm so sorry for the 2% of you that strongly disagree, but I'm glad you're here listening to this, and hopefully this is inspiring you, or maybe there are some tools that you're getting here that you can help to initiate some change within your organization. But you're so right, Vlatka, that this crisis is really creating the catalyst for change that is so needed. And that kind of transitions to, we just have a couple minutes left before we have to go. You did this really cool thing where you took the 2 5-step programs that you've developed for individuals as well as for organizations, and you've added an additional 5 levels. And can you tell us a little bit about that? And it really hooks on to what you described about finding a higher purpose and where we're going through all of this, the vision that you see for the future.
Sure. What I see, this 5-level model, the original theory I developed, is applicable to many different areas. And if you look at, for example, HR Magazine, I published over 40 articles there, and many of them will see and discuss how the 5-level management shift framework can be applied to many other areas, such as dealing with failure or harassment, or social and corporate responsibility, or developing entrepreneurial mindset, and so on and so on. So recently, as I have been reflecting on what is going on in the world, I thought, well, the 5 levels of the management shift can also apply to the levels of consciousness for the whole humanity. So I have developed extension of this model. So the key message here is that at the lower level, there is more worry, more fear. At the highest level, there is more love for humanity, unity, compassion, collaboration. And my key message today is that let's focus on these higher levels. Let's focus on this unity, collaboration, community, love for humanity. And when we do that, we can co-create this new world that is emerging to be a much better place. So we can spread those ripples. I keep using this term when I speak, and I'll just very briefly explain that shifting up these levels is very important, because with our mirror neuron brain cells, we are like neural Wi-Fi. So we pick up the moods and emotions of people around us, and we also emit our emotions to others around us. So when we have people around us that are at lower levels, it's like the negative vortex of energy. It's really demotivating, de-energizing. When we are at high levels, and so we spread these positive ripples, and then the better it gets, the better it gets. This is where, as individuals, we get through life much more easily. We are more resilient, we are more successful, we are more purposeful. Everything gets better and easier. For organizations, we create organizations which are more purposeful, engaging, but also more profitable. So they do well, they do good at the same time. But now let's think about the whole humanity. If we can focus to be on those higher levels, we can then create a better new world for everyone. And I hope that those who are listening will be somewhat inspired to start creating their own ripples and make this world a better place. And this is especially important for our children and their children, for the future generations.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. And your work is very inspiring. So I don't think there's any doubt that people will leave here really encouraged. And we have a great question actually that I would love to bring in here from one of our attendees. They ask, organizations with a changing environment like the one we're in right now are bound to take knee-jerk decisions. How do you stop yourself or your organization from taking them? And I think that's great because, yeah, we are in this bubbly cauldron, and it can just, you don't want to, right, knee-jerk reaction, just instant response. It's a great question. What would you have to say to that?
It's a great question, and which leads back to what I said earlier. Let's step back from this fear and worry and think big. Think about a big picture, think about the big purpose. Can you repurpose organization? Can you be so creative and innovative to envision what kind of maybe new role you can take for the new world, for humanity? Can you just try not to make any quick decisions right now, but get some space, maybe through government grants or furloughing, just so that you get some time to reflect, recalibrate, and make a plan for the next, I don't know, 5-10 years. But yes, those decisions can be very painful. But I would say to everyone, if you can delay making those drastic decisions and letting go of your talent, use some time just to reflect and see what place in this new world you can envision for your organization.
So great. Just another couple questions about timeline. Obviously, time is a factor here. When we weren't in this crisis before, maybe putting together a timeline to take an organization from a 3 to a 4 or 5 would be more flexible, but maybe now it's not. Maybe time is really critical. How long would you say it should take an organization to transfer from a level 3 to a level 4?
It depends really, first of all, where the leader is, because organizational culture is like a mirror. It's a reflection of leaders' consciousness as well. So if leaders are at level 4, so they can see the horizons, they can see the benefits, because those that are stuck firmly at level 3, the analogy I use is, I would say, those have like a brick wall in front of them, and once they start seeing the possibilities at level 4, this is like opening the cracks in the wall so the light comes through. So those that have these cracks in the wall and they can see at level 4 mindset what is possible to do, I would say the whole process can be quicker. So in my experience, I work with dozens of organizations globally, helping them to go through this shift in the last 10 years or so. So in my experience, it took anything between 6 and 12 months, sometimes 18 months, but depends really on the size. If the organization is smaller, the shift is much quicker and easier. If it is a large organization, then we would start with maybe one department, help them to shift, and then it ripples out to other parts of the organization. That takes a little bit longer. But I would also say now in this unprecedented situation, my feeling, my experience is that everything is happening much more quickly. So I think the whole process of the shift can be achieved even quicker because of the situation, as long as people have the awareness. So having the awareness is the first step, and then there are some other, I mean, there are lots of strategies, but maybe to share a couple very, very briefly to those who are interested. So if somebody is at level 3, you want to help them to go to level 4, always use the language of the level above. Because language is very, very important. So, for example, at level 3, keywords are I, me, mine. At level 4, the keywords are we, us, team, trust, and so on. So use that language, help people, give them projects where they have to collaborate with others. That networking, collaboration are very, very important. Share successful stories of the shifts. There are lots of stories. In my latest book, Humane Capital, I captured 35 stories from companies that went through this shift through my interviews with those leaders. So this would be just some of the suggestions that I can very, very briefly now share. But it's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Professor, thank you so much for sharing those with us. And we do have to wrap up here. I just want to end with this great comment from one of our attendees. She said, my current manager operates at level 5. Lucky you. I turned down a new role that was in discussion for me for over a year to stay on her team. They say people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. I'm staying because of one. Thank you. And I love that. I mean, bravo to you. And I think that really encapsulates everything that you said, that in this time, leadership, humanity, empathy is so important, and that will help people stay and give them hope for the future.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing these stories. I have heard similar stories many, many, many times. So we have this situation where people stay jobs because of a great boss, and we have many situations where people have to leave because of the bad bosses, because if they don't leave, their health and well-being will be compromised. So let's focus on and let's be the leaders that we would want for everyone to recognize and to aspire to work with. And by doing that, we can, as I said, spread our ripples and make this world a better place. And we all have the power to do that individually.
Absolutely. Professor Hlupic, thank you so much for your time and all of the wisdom that you shared.
Thank you. And thank you once again to everyone who joined this call. And I'll be happy for anyone to get in touch, maybe through LinkedIn. If anyone has any more questions, I'll be very happy to help.
Yes, absolutely. I was actually going to end by saying, how can people get in touch with you if they would like to hear more, to get in touch with you about consulting? And LinkedIn, you said, is the best place to reach out?
LinkedIn, or my email is vlatka@themanagementshift.com. So I'll be very happy to hear from anyone with further questions.
Wonderful. So there is Professor Hlupic's contact information so that you can get in touch with her. Thank all of you so much for your time. We're wishing you a lot of strength throughout this entire process. We are, I know it's cliche, but we really are all in this together all over the world. And so I hope that you found something really meaningful for you from this discussion today, for you individually, but also that you can take to your team, so that we really can take this opportunity to build a better world. Now is the time. We have the power to be able to do it. And I hope that you heard something today that inspired you to be a part of that effort. So Professor Hlupic, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank all of you. Have a wonderful day wherever you are, and we'll see you next time.